Okay, hi, I am Monet Isabeth, and if you're watching this, you probably know me as the woman on TikTok who went on an expedition with the British Army up Mount Kenya to find her great uncle's long-lost plane from World War II. There have been so many questions about the details of it that I've been trying to answer in the comments, but a lot of people have been asking a few questions over and over again. So this is a video, to answer the FAQ of the expedition. Maybe there'll be some graphics here. Okay, so actually, like, a question that a lot of people have been asking, which is one of a very basic one, which is when did they crash and why did they crash? So basically, my great uncle Simon, that's my father's mother's brother. My father is South African, my great uncle was South African, and he joined the army when he was 19, 20. And he joined the Air Force, and he was stationed in Kenya flying British Air Force planes, the Royal Air Force planes, for practice before he was going to be sent into the war. So when they were flying, the Blenheim bombers, now I am not an aviation expert, so if you're watching this and you know so much more about Blenheim bombers than I do, I apologize. But basically the Blenheim bomber was a pretty new form of aircraft. It's a twin engine plane, and it was brand new, and they didn't have that, with the pressures of war, they didn't have that much time to have everyone be highly trained. So in many cases, the people that were training the soldiers to fly these planes were also just learning the equipment themselves. Specifically in Kenya, around Mount Kenya, the terrain is just so different from any other flying experience that these guys would have had. The weather changes super fast. The theory, because obviously we can't know, is that they got a little bit lost, cloud cover came in, and they thought they were somewhere else, and they flew straight into the mountainside. One person, Tom Lawrence, who is a retired flower farmer but historian buff, he thinks that if they had been flying maybe 10 feet higher or 10 meters higher, they could have gone over the mountain. But they weren't, and they just most likely crashed right into it, and they would have died on impact, is what we think. They didn't even see it coming. There would have been a big fire when the plane went into the mountain, and that is how they all would have died. Oh, and when did this all happen? So practice mission that they took off on was July 23rd, 1942, which was actually the day after my great uncle's 21st birthday. So he was very young, as was, everyone else in the plane. And a couple of you aviation buffs were asking what kind of plane it was. It was a Blenheim bomber. Did I find my great uncle? There's probably like a poetic way to answer that, which would be like, yes, I found him because we found the crash site and that's where he died. Did we actually find his body? No, not yet. But we've gone up the mountain twice. Both times we did not find any remains, because what happened was, so the plane was originally found in 2002 by a poacher on the mountain. And then the British Army had 4 expeditions up to the crash site in 2002, trying to figure out what plane this was, who was on it. And on the 4th expedition, they had an expert from the UK and Blenheim bombers. His name is John Romaine. He went up to the crash site. He was the one who figured out, he figured out it was Z7763. That was the plane number identification. And they figured out all the crew members were South African. On that expedition, they found some bones. Apparently, it's like, maybe they found a bone like this big, like maybe an arm bone or something. They didn't have permission from next of kin to bring it off the mountain. They bagged them up and they buried them on the site. But there are conflicting stories about where they buried them. So when we went up the first time, we dug and dug and dug and we couldn't find it. The second time that we went up, we, due to poor planning, didn't have enough time. We also had trouble finding the plane again because we had coordinates for where the army camped, but not where the actual plane was. And it's really hard to fucking see in the bamboo. It's really thick. You cannot see 10 feet away from you. Something could be there and you couldn't see it in the bamboo. So we once again had trouble finding the plane, but we did find it the second expedition. But we didn't have that much time before we had to turn around again because once again, we had a problem with water. And so we dug where we thought, we sort of thought, okay, this was the one place we didn't dig on the first expedition. So we dug there and we still didn't find the remains. So we are going to go up one more time, hopefully in September. We have the exact coordinates of where the plane is, so we will not get lost again. We're going to stay out for 2 nights. We are going to have shovels. Hopefully people to help us dig, and we are going to do one last time, try to dig as much as we can to see if we can find remains. And one of the reasons it's so important to find the remains is that one of the remaining next of kin, this woman is the niece and nephew-in-law, her husband, whatever that is that nephew-in-law, of one of the men who died on the plane. And her grandparents, so the man who died's parents, always thought that their son might be found and might come home. And so when they died, they had a burial plot put next to their own graves for their son. So there's an empty burial plot in South Africa, and my goal is to bring something off the mountain that we can put in that burial plot for them, especially because this husband and wife are one of the main reason why this expedition even happened in the first place. And I'm gonna go more into that story in the documentary that I'm making. Why did the British Army help me? One reason is because my great uncle and this plane was a plane from the British Army. It was a Royal Air Force plane that was flying. There's also in the Army, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, no soldier left behind. And this is very much in that spirit. The soldiers who were helping us in Kenya and leading the expedition really felt that they were, helping their fellow brothers and bringing them home to a war, World War II, that a lot of people feel very strongly about, so important in the history of the world, and Britain's involvement in it. Did they pay for my trip? They did not pay for my trip. Coincidentally, the first time that I went down in 2016, I was doing photo and video for nonprofits at that point, and I'd never been to Kenya before, but already, it's such a crazy coincidence, that exact month, October 2016, I already had a plane ticket to Kenya because I was going there for work for the first time. So I was lucky enough to already have my trip paid for, the flight paid for, and I was able to just extend it and stay on. But other than that, everything is self-funded. This is my work, so I do freelance photo and video jobs that are much less exciting on the side, and then channel all of the money that I make into this documentary project, into other travel projects that I do. I have a travel series called Who Knows Where that you can also watch on here. I also have a Patreon that people who want to support the work that I'm doing support me each month. So Patreon, I love Patreon. It's amazing. And there's like perks too. This isn't meant to be a sales pitch, but if you're interested in supporting, maybe it is a sales pitch. Link down there somewhere in the nether regions. Okay, so other people were asking what other things we found at the site. So the site is amazing. And both times we've found it, I have cried when I reached there, because it's just always surprisingly emotional to find it and see it, this like relic of history, but like also my personal history, my family history there on this mountainside. Because of the plane crash, there are bits of metal everywhere. You can dig and you find wires, and there'll be like the control box or like a radio box. Last time we went up, we found a rubber sole of a shoe that I brought home. We found like little serial number plates that were on the plane. We haven't found much else that's like someone's personal things, but I'm hoping on this third trip, if we're going to be digging so extensively, we can find a lot more things and bring them back for people. The bits of metal in the plane are everywhere, like from huge chunks. And when you get to the crash site, the plane, like the cross section of the plane, there's like a wing there with like the turrets going down, like it's just there, and there's a tail wings sticking up with the like spiky things going, I'm sorry, not an aviation expert, spiky things going off of it. And it's just an incredible sight to behold. Which leads into the next question, which people are asking to see footage. I am editing a documentary series. There's gonna be one episode for each expedition. So there's 2 expeditions have happened. I filmed both of them. I filmed the first one. My filmmaker, Naima Malaika, she filmed the second one. She's a South African filmmaker. She's amazing. And the third one is going to happen in September. I don't know, with COVID and everything, who's going to be filming it. Maybe I'm going to have to do that one myself too. But there will be 3 episodes, and I'm editing 2 of them right now. And if you want to make that happen even faster, join my Patreon. Did we see any wild animals? So luckily, we have not seen any wild animals. It's maybe the more boring answer, but there are leopard on the mountain, there are elephants, there are buffalo. When we hike, for some of the time, we follow elephant and buffalo trails that have just sort of like barreled through the bamboo, because it's much easier to go through the bamboo if you're following a path. And so we follow those paths, and we've seen like fresh animal dung, fresh elephant dung, but we haven't actually run into any, which I'm happy about. I don't think I want to run into an elephant in a very narrow bamboo corridor. I have experienced fire ants when we were coming down on the first expedition. You're sort of going like, you go really slowly in this line when you're actually chopping through the bamboo, because it's really slow going, and that's why it's mentally very tough at times, carrying such a heavy backpack, like 60-ish pounds. And let me silence this. You have to sort of just stand there like shuffling at times while the person in the front, or the people in the front, are trying to chop away through the bamboo. And one of those times when we were standing, I sort of started feeling like little pricks on my legs going up closer and closer to my groin. I look down and we're standing on just like matted forest growth that's just like decaying under our feet. And you really feel it's like really cushy. It feels like it's probably like several feet of forest that's just decomposing beneath you. And I look, and there are these red ants just like swarming all on the feet, and they were like, you could feel them like coming and biting up, and everyone started like dancing, and it was like very unpleasant feeling them go up and painful. When we finally got off the mountain, I took off my feet. I had dead ants all in my socks. Like they just like burrowed into my socks and were dead in there. Whew. So I hope I also don't see those again. And those were kind of the top questions, I think, for now. But if you have questions that I didn't answer, please ask them below and I can make another video. Cannot wait for you guys to see this docuseries, because I'm just so excited to share this story.